Welcome back to Arkansas Bigfoot, everybody. I hope you're having a great day today. For the past several days I've had something kind of gnawing at me deep down inside that I just needed to take a deeper look at and turn over and examine. And one of the things that kept coming up when we were trying to have conversations over the last few days with Anku and some of the others out here, the word cause and some of different phrases that they used that basically led me to the assumption that there's a injustice or a misidentification.
Misconception is the word they give me.
Mm-hmm. And Bigfoot gets blamed for all kinds of things.
Well, he always has.
Always has. He's been the scapegoat for years and years with a lot of things that happen out in the woods. I think we'd like to examine a real monster in the forest, if you will.
They gave us an alternative to a really bad situation for somebody and gave a better explanation for what actually happened. They're used to being a scapegoat. That in and by itself is nothing new and nothing that they own. But they feel like people have a right to really know what would genuinely try to get a hold of them in certain environments. And it's more for your protection than it is for their name. Although I get a picture of a scale, like it's fair to balance the scale and at least have an opportunity to defend themselves when they're getting a blame. And I think that's fair. As a people, we would expect the same. So we're going to speak for something that was laid on our heart and something that we feel might be a good alternative to a really bad situation they got the blame for.
So what I'd like for everybody to do is put yourself in the jury box, and we're going to present this side of the examination, and you can draw your own conclusions as to what you think about anything at the end. But we'll start, or I'll start, with a little bit of factual history, because we have said consistently throughout this adventure that everything is connected and everything ties together. And so here is another presentation of connecting some dots. So on April 16th of 1886, there was a train that arrived in St. Augustine, Florida. People all around the area showed up to meet the train and catch a glimpse of those that it had carried from such a great distance away. On that morning, the newest people to arrive in St. Augustine were a group of Apaches that were taken prisoner in Arizona. They were transported for confinement at Old Fort Marion, today the Castillo de San Marcos. When they walked off the train that early morning, these people did not resemble the proud, fearless men and women who had evaded, fought, and struggled against the American army for so long. Onlookers undoubtedly had expected to see a spectacle of mighty warriors disembarking on that April day. What they saw instead was a group of tired, beaten, weary, poorly clad people, completely exhausted by their long years of fighting and hardship. Upon their arrival, a Florida Times reporter described the scene as the Apache prisoners emerged from the train. First came the men, each with shoulders and head wrapped in a blanket and all marching with the expressionless faces and stately gait. Then came the young bucks with less dignity and fewer blankets, as well as fewer clothes of any kind. Then straggling along, one by one, came the young women, girls, and children. Their identities and reputations as Apache Indians The last Western tribe to ultimately surrender had preceded them. But when they arrived at St. Augustine, they were forced to succumb to their new identity as prisoners of the United States Army. The prisoners that were brought to Fort Marion had fought with the great war chiefs Chihuahua, Nachi, and Geronimo. For years they had struggled against the efforts of the American Army, resisting plans to push them onto reservations. But after years of hardship and struggle, these mighty people and their chiefs began to surrender one by one. The United States government, fearing that if they were left in the West, these Apaches would go back on the warpath. They decided to imprison them in an eastern remote location. General Sherman and President Grover Cleveland decided on the old Castillo in St. Augustine, Florida. Over 500 Apaches would eventually see the insides of these walls. Placed in charge of the fort and its prisoners was Colonel Langdon. He was responsible for their physical well-being. Attending to this task, Langdon arrived and arranged for the prisoners' medical care, food distribution, and clothing. The size and layout of the fort gave room to house only about 150 people, but the military had placed all 502 Apaches within the walls as its prisoners. This forced them to live in extremely crowded conditions in the rooms, and most eventually ended up living in the 130 cone-shaped Sibley tents on top of the fort. The few who were in the rooms slept on the damp mortar floors, which did not help retain their health. The majority living in the tents were able to get plenty of fresh air at least. Their daily diet was a full army ration consisting of a pound of beef for adults and half of that for children, bread, rice, turnips, hominy, occasional sugar and coffee, and beans. Once a week they received a small quantity of potatoes and onions. Nothing was fresh. Most of the time it was past the point of human consumption. Now I'm sure at this point you're asking yourself, what does any of this have to do with Sasquatch or Bigfoot? And realistically, that story doesn't have anything in particular to do with Sasquatch and Bigfoot, but it does have something very specific to do with what the rest of the story is. This historical account is fact that places a group of people in a geographic area of Florida with their own types of beliefs and mysticisms and practices. The Apache, the Navajo, the Chiricahua, a lot of them from that range, from that area of the western United States, shared some common belief structures. So given that their entire world has been swept away and they've been relocated to the entire opposite side of the United States, that's going to create a lot of bitter resentment, a lot of hatred. Some that are more prone to the dark shaman paths, things like this, are going to be more susceptible to exploring the Skinwalker aspect of themselves. There probably needs to be a little bit of clarification on this as well, because there's a lot of conjecture and misunderstanding about Skinwalkers and what they are and what their ability is. So you take an individual that is in that dark emotional space, and they've decided that they basically want to lose all aspects of their humanity through rituals and charms and incantations and ceremony. They basically make a pact with these dark, malevolent masters. And in the process of this, they have to offer up as a sacrifice a family member to be consumed through cannibalism. The whole process is to strip away all of their human consciousness, human emotion, human empathy. They become these beasts, these creatures, these monsters. Their entire drive is based on cannibalism, energetic cannibalism for their dark masters. They have the abilities to shift and transform their appearance to look like any animal or creature, period. If they want to look like a fox, they'll look like a fox. If they want to look and appear as a Sasquatch, they'll appear as a Sasquatch. If they want to look like a coyote or a wolf, which is a more common theme, that ability is there. They can approach you in any manner, shape, or form. Another ability that they have, and this is kind of along the lines of mind speak, but not in a genteel way. It's more like a mind rape. They can get into your head in an excruciating manner and torment and harass you. Once you're tagged, it's game on. They can follow you anywhere, appearing as dark shadows or other creatures or entities. Their whole objective is to wear you down and strip away all of your sanity and all of your essence so it can be drained by their dark masters and end up with you being cannibalized, essentially.
At least energetically cannibalized.
At least energetically cannibalized and tormented. It's not very often through the course of our videos that I feel compelled to write down any notes. I think I've only done it once in 150 plus videos, but I've got a little sheet of notes with me today, and I want to hit some of these other highlights that I haven't touched on already. Alright, so we've already discussed the bitter resentment and total loss of humanity. They join with dark malevolent forces that they call their masters via rituals and incantations and practices that involve sacrifice and cannibalism. They can appear as a single entity, they can appear as a group. Sometimes it will be just one, sometimes it can be upwards of a dozen.
Commonly, it's what, 3?
Now here's a beneficial note, if it helps. The only way to kill one, actually, is to find out their real human name and speak it to their face. And then the lore says that they'll die within 3 days. Alright, so these were most typical and common to the western states at the time, back through the 1800s and on till today. But via relocation, migrations, they have become a plague and a pestilence all over the country.
And they're sneaky that way because people are anticipating that they are only in the Southwest as they traditionally were, and there are still many there.
So you take something that has got this perverted mind speak ability, a painful process. It can appear as shadow creatures. It can stalk and haunt you. It torments you, and literally its job is to drive you insane, so it can feed on the chemical cocktail of emotions and tormented energy.
And adrenaline.
Adrenaline, all of these things that this creates. That sounds very much like a story we've all just heard recently.
We've had a lot of people reaching out to us about it. And something about it, something wasn't resonating with Sasquatch. And we put it out there that we might get a pure or a better explanation for what really happened, because we could see that something happened. Everybody could see that something happened. But what was interesting was, even though it was a charged and emotional conversation, there wasn't the soulful emotion that many of us experience with true tears or true there's just something that we're looking for when we're in an emotionally charged place, and it wasn't, something just wasn't fitting. And of course it wasn't what we had experienced, but we took for granted that maybe our experience wasn't somebody else's experience, and we just kept on rolling, but it was just plaguing us. And when this came up, it was just like this huge gong went off. And I feel like the information was brought to us to present, because choice is important, and we all need to have the choice of decision or thought or whatever. But it fit perfectly. And we've been to that fort, and it's small.
We've seen the scrawling and scratching on the walls from the prisoners that were held there.
And the energy there is very intense.
After a time, they started allowing them to go out into the town and kind of integrate with the surrounding community. And I'm pretty sure after a while that most of them just got tired of worrying about it, and they just let them go off and wander and do and be wherever they wanted to go.
As long as they weren't causing problems, right?
So that historically places this element in the geographic region of Florida and how it can spread out.
And even in the act, thought crossed my mind, even in the act of having to kill a loved one, those were circumstances where perhaps a loved one might have been on that fringe anyway, or maybe they were starving, or, you know, there's so many factors that played into that situation that might have made that ultimately too tempting. And maybe the teaching or the instruction of being a skinwalker had already been placed before they had been moved. Maybe they hadn't completed the process, but they had the opportunity, and this darkness had the opportunity to play on their head in that extreme situation.
And remember, the whole process of this is a choosing process. This is something that each individual that pursued it chose to go down that path and commit these sacrifices and acts of cannibalism to transform them into this supernatural beast. Unlike something like a Wendigo, whichever way you prefer to pronounce it, those are typically created out of extreme hunger and fear environments, kind of like Donner Pass incident, or being trapped in a remote location out in the wilderness with nothing to eat but the group that you're with type of situation. And that's the energy that creates a Wendigo, which is entirely different from a Skinwalker. So we thought it would be interesting to explore this and present it to you and let you look at it, feel it, listen to it, decide for yourself. But there are other things that are out there in the woods that are way beyond, more dangerous than any Sasquatch you'll ever encounter. I think we're going to get on with our walk today. Let's get on down the trail and see what we discover. Well, a few days ago we came out and brought some dolls back to the back of the woods that Marilyn had sent and donated to us, and wanted to see what the reaction would be, or if there was any reaction. We haven't been back here since that day, so we need to take care of these trees and go check all of it out and see what we find. So let's go ahead and take our walk. We set out at the edge of the woods a couple of nights over the past few days and just trying to listen and feel for some of the answers or some of the topic that we just finished up talking about. And I should have gone to the store yesterday, because one of the other things that kept coming back was we need more apples.
Yeah, and they've been digging. Look. Digging. I think more of them are coming down here, and definitely need more apples.
One of the things we did notice when we were walking back to set the camera up to have our first part of the talk was a few extra little glyphs on the trail that weren't there a few days ago. Little triangles and asterisks, or whatever you prefer to call them. I guess they like the green apples just as much as the red ones. I don't think they've got a preference, but...
Yeah, I haven't found any evidence of them, so they must be eating them. They seem to like that sweet feed a lot. What is that, oats? Sweet pea?
Yeah, it's mostly oats and molasses, and
they love it.
kind of like a granola bar in pellet form. Never know which way to gauge it, because sometimes when it's really quiet, that's when we catch some sounds and knocks back in the back, and we've caught them when it's been the exact opposite of it and been a lot of ruckus or noise going on. But
it's early, so
I thought we'd better do it earlier in the day today, because most of the time, because of the heat, we've been waiting till late evening just to make it bearable for us to walk around.
Then we run out of light. And keeping our eye out because I've been catching sight of them standing straight on the path. Still some yards out, but a little less behind the trees. Unless we're real close, and then they'll kind of step over to one. Some of our young ones have gotten big enough, it's getting harder and harder for them to hide behind these trees. These aren't massive redwoods or anything here, and curiosity gets the better of them, and a lot of times they're leaning out half covered.
Usually when we start talking about anything, you can feel them gather around, curious to listen or see what we're doing. But well, I kind of wanted to walk up this direction around. This seems to be the congregation point lately. I don't know if the camera will pick that up. I'm seeing something down, like it's sitting or laying on the ground back there. Hey, the dolls are gone.
They sure are. Let's go see. The rocks are still where they're supposed to be.
There's a new glyph laying there.
What? Alright.
Wow, what is that?
I'm looking here. Let's see.
Right there, leaning up against that little tree.
Geez. I'm sitting there looking at the glyph and it's right there. It's a ball.
Ha! Look at that.
That's alright. I don't know. Is it a cross or is it a people? I think it's a people.
It's something like a, I don't know if it's supposed to be one of them. I can see arms and feet and something.
Maybe.
Their
version of a doll?
There you go. It's a Bigfoot doll.
That's awesome. This is interesting because they love balls, they love spheres. Not real complex, but I don't know, it seems to be pretty tight.
It hadn't been too long. It's still pretty green.
Well,
Oh, it's been 3.5 days ago that we brought that stuff out.
yeah, look here, some of them are.
Yeah, there's some of the marbles out of the sandbox.
6 is I get the word harmony. That's interesting. An asterisk.
An asterisk glyph, a Bigfoot doll, and a ball.
And marble.
And marbles. Well, I think we know who the culprit is that took the dolls.
Maybe they work together, I don't know.
Well,
Can you just see the fight between the young ones and Junior? Because Junior's supposed to be starting.
Well, I know he's had a
I think
fetish.
Junior did this for sure.
Fetish for, you know, all of the balls and stuff, taking the dog toys and the balls that we brought out here and left for him.
I think this is kind of a signature card. The ball.
That's cool. Let me see that.
Well, thank you guys. That's just really unexpected. Wow. They never cease to surprise us. We'll have to bring them some more sweetgrass braids soon.
Well, now the next question is, where'd the dolls go to?
Well, I guess we can look close, but not sure. I'm not seeing anything here.
Alright guys, well stay tuned for the next adventure. I guess we're going on a doll hunt. Appreciate you tagging along today. Hit the like, share, and subscribe, and we'll catch you down the trail.